Welcome to this week's episode of Healthy Conversations, presented by Athens Limestone Hospital, where we connect you with the people and expertise behind better health in our community. I'm Susan Claiborne, joined by Karina Farr and Jerome Malone, and today we're honored to welcome Dr. Stocks, a physician with Athens Community Care. In this episode, we're taking a closer look at the health issues that affects millions, diabetes. Dr. Stocks is here to help us better understand how sugary drinks, energy drinks, and other lifestyle choices impact our blood sugar, our energy, and our long-term health. We'll also talk about simple, sustainable changes we can make to prevent diabetes, manage and improve overall wellness. You won't want to miss this conversation. So Dr. Stocks, thank you for being here. I know you kind of had to work us into your patient scheduling, so we really appreciate it. But obviously this is an important topic. We probably all know somebody or live with someone who has to manage diabetes. So we just really appreciate it. So just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you're still fairly new to the community.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so again, my name's Dr. Stocks. Originally from Mississippi, I came to Alabama to train at UAB Huntsville for family medicine residency and decided to stay in the area. So I'm now, like you said, practicing at Athens Community Care. Do primarily outpatient medicine. I do some hospitalists as well. As far as everything goes, diabetes, yes, is one of those things, or one of those topics I like to focus on a lot heavily. Because of where we live, it's basically as common as sweet tea is. Which is
yeah, don't touch our sweet tea, right?
I like it, but all right.
So as far as like with diabetes, like you said, you kind of like to focus on that because obviously it does impact most of us. So kind of maybe give us just kind of a simple explanation of, we hear about things like pre-diabetes and diabetes. Kind of just give us a simple explanation about that.
Sure. So diabetes affects about 12% of the entire U.S. population, and that's people who are diagnosed that we know about. Okay, so it's fairly common. So when you think about that, when you're walking around outside, that's basically 1 in every about 9 people that you're going to meet who likely has some form of diabetes. Okay, my father, he's a diabetic. He's been a diabetic almost all my life, and basically he has to do a lot to help manage what he has going on. It's nothing for me to go in the clinic. If I have a full day, probably about half of the patients are going to have some form of diabetes. Basically, the majority of people that you're going to see right now, type 2 diabetics, because that's the most common form of it. About 90% of cases that you're going to see are type 2 diabetics. And that's mainly because of, like we said a minute ago, where we're located at, the South is typically one of the heavier areas when it comes down to it. And that's due to a litany of different reasons. Food deserts, health decisions on a daily basis, access to healthy options, or just the choice to continue to eat the thing that you know you shouldn't be eating, but you couldn't get away from that guilty pleasure, correct? And then you have other forms of diabetes too, right? You have the type 1s that you hear about a lot of times. Those are normally you're diagnosing your kids who you find those when you're seeing a kid in the hospital for the first time in the ER and they're being diagnosed with DK. And that's likely a lot of times how we find the kids who have type 1 diabetes. And then as far as everyone else goes, when they do decide to come see someone like myself, then that's when we like to have that conversation and have that. Or if they go to the ER and they're going and complaining of different kind of vague symptoms, and we can kind of touch on that a little bit later if you want to.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, this is an interesting conversation. Mm-hmm. So just to keep it real, keep it 100, this morning, I decided not to drink my energy drink because I knew we was going to have this conversation. And I was going to wait till the conversation was over so that I can, just make some good sound decisions moving forward.
Okay.
And so, but I will say, when I came in, I saw a couple of people with some energy drinks. So I'm not going to call any names. But, talking about diabetes, it sounds scary, mm-hmm. right? So what is it exactly? And just the impact on a person's life. Can you talk about that a little bit? I hear it, you've always you hear it all your life, but I would like to know more information about it.
Sure. So when you think about it, how grandma likes to call it is the sugar. right?
The
It's
sugar.
always been called the sugar. And, you know, we typically, we kind of normalized in society to a sense. We're thinking that it's just a blood sugar problem. It's not that. And it's a lot more complicated than that. Think about it in so many different terms. It's a dysregulation of blood sugar, right? So your body is having a hard time keeping up with managing your eating habits, okay? So you want your pancreas to do a nice little walk. If you're going to a park, right? You want your pancreas to just get on a nice little walk and just do its job normally, right? But when you're constantly putting a lot of ultra processed foods in your system and a lot of sugar in your system, a lot of things that just aren't good for you, right? A lot of things full of sugar. Well, now you took that nice little walk and you asked it to start sprinting. Now, if I asked you to sprint, you know, walk from Athens to Huntsville, you know, just like a gentle walk, you probably could do that. You know, if I just say, hey, just walk, no problem, right? But if I told you, hey, you have to sprint all the way from Athens to Huntsville, nonstop, no breaks whatsoever, right? Then how far are you going to go before you finally decide, okay, I'm stopping, right?
Right.
So that's basically what you're asking your pancreas to do on a daily basis when you constantly keep exposing it to so much sugar over and over and over and over again. So now your body's like, you know what? Hey, I'm tired of all this. I'm going to become resistant to all what you're telling me to do. So the pancreas is now burning itself out. And now your body's saying, hey, I'm not listening as well because I'm tired of doing this whole process over and over again. And now here comes the diabetes. So most people, when they come see me, if they're doing what I'm asking them to do, right? They come in, they see us nice and early, right? Nice and young. You're doing what you're supposed to do. You're following up your PCP. You're being a good steward of your health, right? Let's say we find you early on and you're a pre-diabetic. I don't know if you guys ever heard that term before.
I have, yeah.
But typically those are the ones who there's a couple ways you can check blood sugar or you can check A1C, different things like that. But pre-diabetics are typically your people with A1C between 5.7 and less than 6.5, okay? Think about hemoglobin A1C. I know a lot of diabetics know what that number is, but to the normal person, think of if I waste a sugary drink, as we already talking about, on this counter, I allow it to dry. And then that spot becomes sticky, right? Well, think about how many red blood cells in your body that are becoming sticky with that sugar. So we call it that's what hemoglobin A1C is in a kind of a short, concise, elementary form without going way too far into the sticks. So we're measuring that number to tell where you are. Pre-diabetics are typically in that range, or we check your fasting blood sugar in between 100 to 100, about 24-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood. And from there, we can start talking about different things, which I know we'll kind of talk about a little bit later on. And then you have the other types who come and I see them for the first time and I get a A1C or a fasting blood sugar and their blood sugar is 280 or 300 or whatever the case may be. Then that's when we had to talk about all the other different things and what we need to do about it, okay? Because basically make the diagnosis of diabetes once your fasting sugar is greater than 126 or your A1C is greater than 6.5, or you do something called an oral glucose tolerance test which I'm pretty sure any ladies who have had children before know exactly how bad that test is and how disgusting that syrupy water was. But yeah, so you can do that test as well and then check a blood sugar after that and determine if someone's diabetic. So.
Yeah. I've always had a really big sweet tooth, and it's funny that you talk about that glucose test because I had to do that a year and a half ago now probably. I did that glucose test, but the funny thing is I didn't hate it because I like sugar that much. That's the problem. It tasted like orange high C to me, and I actually did not hate it. I was fully prepared to hate it because everybody said it's terrible, but I think I have such a sweet tooth that it honestly did not bother me that bad, and I don't think that's a good thing. I think it's probably good that I'm sitting here having this conversation. I think I needed this, and I was the one coming in with my Celsius this morning, so yeah. So that leads me to my question of sugar-free versus like sugar labeled on drinks and things. Does that really make a difference in your body? Is one actually better for you? I mean, I tell myself it's better for me to have a sugar-free energy drink because when I drink a coffee, I put so much milk and sugar in it. It's probably going to be 400 calories by the time I'm done. So I tell myself my energy drink is a better option for me. But is it really a better option?
So when you're talking about calories, right? The most popular energy drink, and I'm guilty of it too, is as currently right now is Celsius, right? You know, we grew up having Red Bulls, Monsters, those kind of guys, but a lot of people started to realize over time that those drinks had excessive amounts of sugar in them. Sometimes you look at the back of the can and you can see that they have anywhere from a day to a day and a half worth of sugar in just that one can, right? And now, so you have the advent of new energy drinks like Alani's, Celsius, different things like that that are supposed to be 5 calories. And calorie wise, okay, they're decent. They're similar to sparkling water, right? But there's been some data that shows that even those artificial sweeteners can still trigger an insulin response inside the body once you do drink them. Albeit not as severe as something from Starbucks. I know some people are going to hate me for that, but but you know, when you think about, you know, by the time you're done making your drink at Starbucks, once you add the caramel syrup and the vanilla syrup and all the ice and the milk and the different creamers and whatever the sprinkles and whipped cream that you want to add to this drink, now you've taken something that should have been only about 5 to 10 calories and pushed it into the neighborhood of 400, 500 calories, basically a meal in a cup. Now, when you think about it, when you drink that, how often are you full after you drink that?
Right, not very often.
No, not
You're
very
still going to eat a big old breakfast.
Exactly, you come right
with
behind that.
big old drink.
And so now you got this huge insulin spike already because you basically drank nothing but liquid sugar, for lack of better words. And now you're going to add more carbs on top of that because think about it, breakfast most of the time, you're breaking a fast. Most of the time your breakfast is full of what? Carbs, right? Because you want to get your day going. So now you're taking this big pile of carbs and you're stacking it on another pile of carbs. And then you wonder why you get to about mid-morning and you have this crash.
So that's why I always need a snack when it comes to after I've had my energy drink.
Or nap.
Yeah.
Or you go and grab the energy drink. Right?
Yeah, grab another one.
Right back and you grab a second one. Right?
I'm feeling convicted here.
Yeah. So what do you suggest for people who are in that cycle?
So, as someone who's personally broken themselves out of the cycle with Celsius recently, you have to get yourself in a point where you're realizing that, hey, am I picking this up because I need it? Or am I picking this up because it's convenient, it's close by? Because a lot of times as well is that you're thirsty more so than anything else, but you're grabbing the closest thing that's possible, right? So if my Celsius is sitting right here, I'm constantly thirsty, I'm picking it up, okay? I'm picking it up, I'm drinking over and over and over again, right? Well, if you go ahead and just say, hey, you know what, let me move my water bottle in front of this and put the Celsius behind, or just take Celsius and either go pour it out or put it in the refrigerator, save for another day. Those are different things, right? Moderation is key when it comes down to any of this stuff, right? I mean, you can drink too much water and it'll do damage, right? But the thing is we're talking about something that's highly concentrated in the amount of caffeine that it has. Like if you look at Celsius, most Celsius has about 200 milligrams of caffeine, right? Well, most people only need about 80 if you're going to have any kind of caffeine intake, okay? But you drink this entire can and then it leads to you having this nice high for the rest of the day, getting your stuff done. You're feeling good about yourself and whatnot. You're enjoying this new flavor from Celsius. One of my current favorites is raspberry peach. It tastes amazing. But commercial. Exactly, right? But then you get to this point where it's like, okay, I'm getting tired now. Let me just try to wind down for the day. And then you find yourself just staring at the ceiling at 11 o'clock. Here comes 12 o'clock. Goes 1 a.m. and it's like, okay, fine, I find doze off. Oh, wait, my alarm goes off the next morning at 5 a.m. or my toddlers wake me up. Okay, I'm groggy again. Now let me, just what I'm gonna do, grab another Celsius because now I'm tired. And it creates this vicious cycle over and over and over and over again because now I'm drinking more energy drink to correct for the fatigue that I had for the day before, create more fatigue for the next day. My sleep is not getting where it needs to go because caffeine disrupts REM sleep. So you go right back into not having good REM sleep on top of that, and then you start the whole process over the next day. So a lot of times when you're breaking it up, I tell people to either switch it up, grab a cup of water instead, see if you're just thirsty, okay? Or see if you're just doing it out of habit. It's the same thing with like my smokers. A lot of times they're smoking not because they're craving the nicotine, because it's just the habit of putting the cigarette to the mouth over and over and over again.
So would you say it is like an addiction, a normalized addiction now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, easily. They've done studies on how addicting sugar is, and it's up there with some narcotics in terms of how addictive it is. So when you think about why people have such a hard time, putting it down, well, it's because your body's craving it. Your dopamine receptors and everything else in your brain have been so overdrawn, just like your insulin receptors, right? You basically worn yourself out, and now your body can't, like just a little bit is just not enough anymore. Now you need a lot more on top of that. Same thing with the caffeine. Well, if I went to sleep at 1 and woke up again at 5, okay, fine, let's just drink another Celsius. Well, now I'm going to sleep at 1:30 the next morning, right? Because for me, I'm caffeine sensitive. So I found this out the hard way when I drank this one used to be called AMP. I don't know if they make AMP anymore. I had this when I was in medical school. First time really like trying caffeine out like that serious amount because I needed to study. I had a biochemical exam coming up, needed to really study. And I drank it. and I stayed up for 28 hours.
Goodness.
So yeah, it wore me out. Obviously, I did not do well on that test because I was exhausted, and so now I'm freaking out because I didn't do well on this test. So let me compensate for the next test. So what I do? I grab another, and then your body's like, hey, I need this to function now because I'm used to functioning at this level. So I need this amount of caffeine to correct for it. So what did I do? All right, fine. Let me taper back. Let me pull myself off of this. What you have to do is taper down. Some people like doing cold turkey. I don't recommend it. If it works, okay. But doing a graded approach where you slowly pull yourself off of it to where you're only using it as needed as opposed to relying on it. A lot of times when I have my writing prescription, people tell me all the time, I don't want to be relying on this medication. Okay. Well, what can we do to get you to the point where you don't need the medication? Right? And are you making the choices on a daily basis to where we don't have to even have a conversation about medication?
Because like with pre-diabetes, that is kind of the idea is you're learning about it quickly. So you have an option to make some lifestyle choices before you, I guess, cross over from pre-diabetes to diabetes. Is that accurate?
Yes. So depends on who you ask sometimes. I kind of like having the same thought process as some endocrinologists do. Once I see the pre-diabetes numbers, I try to tell people they're going to treat this as aggressively as if you do have diabetes. Now, granted, by the number standpoint, we're not there yet. But right now, if you weren't on an intensive regimen where you are exercising, you're eating correctly, you're doing small things on a daily basis, we need to get there. And we need to get there fast. So a lot of times I enter so-called bets with my patients where I'm like, hey, I'm going to see you back in 6 months. My goal weight loss for you in this time frame is this, and we're going to shake on it. So I do a lot of nutritional counseling on that regard in order to try to get them there. And a lot of times when I'm teaching them about this stuff, there are things that I've done myself. So when they're seeing me talk about this stuff, they're like, okay, he's a cook. He likes to cook. So he's telling me different things that he does at home that I can go back and replicate and make things easier for myself. So whenever you get the pre-diabetes diagnosis, the main thing you have to do is lifestyle. The same thing with high cholesterol, hypertension. They used to have the diagnosis of pre-hypertension. They kind of got rid of it because they kind of saw it in the same vein with the diabetes. Having the pre-diabetes, you kind of see it and go, hey, let's not sit and wait on this to progress because it's like a train leaving the station. It's going to leave. It's just how fast is it going to go? That makes sense?
It does. Definitely.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
One thing I appreciate you sharing your own testimony when you're talking to people, because a lot of times I feel like the doctor's judging me on the other side. So I appreciate that.
We listen, we don't judge.
The other piece is I was wanting to know, is there a line that you can cross of no return as far as, once you have diabetes, you have it for the rest of your life, or is there a way to correct it? Or what's the...
So, obviously when you hear about diabetes, most people get afraid because they're worried about, oh my God, what about all the medications I'm going to be on? Like everyone here talked about already, we kind of know someone who has diabetes. We see the innumerable pill bottles in their closet, right? Or the shots now that you now have in the refrigerators, right? So I have patients who have gotten themselves to the point where they have what we call diet controlled diabetes. Okay. So the point where, like, one of my patients here, he did very well. He did excellent over 6 months, took his A1C from 15, which is very high, to about 6 in 6 months. So he went from being a severe uncontrolled diabetic to being a well-controlled diabetic to the point where we don't need medications anymore. He's controlling this by a lifestyle modification on his own. So he's exercising at least 5 times a week. And when I say exercise, he's really exercising. Like you'll probably pass by him walking down the road in Athens. But he's really getting after it that way. He's made all the nutrition changes I asked him to do. And like a lot of patients, he was so worried about having to stay on insulin, stay on all these medications. Well, now he's not requiring any of those anymore because he's getting under control with just diet alone. And a lot of times I try to instruct patients that it's just that simple. It's just that easy. But you have to be disciplined on a daily basis to put yourself there.
Once you cross that line, you have to do all of that to maintain.
Yes, you have to, because after a while, it's basically like you're trying to help the pancreas get back online. Okay. Sometimes you can. Sometimes the pancreas may be burnt out completely. Okay. It really depends on how bad it was when you got yourself there. For instance, I've had patients who, no matter what I tell them to do, they're still drinking 5 or 6 Mountain Dews a day. Okay. Which is coming out to about 9-10 days worth of sugar. in one day.
Mountain Dew and Sun Drop around here definitely get people.
Sun Drop.
Sun Drop.
Boy. If you ever look at the label on the back of Sun Drop or Mountain Dew, you'll see, I think it's about 153 for a tall bottle of Mountain Dew, which is about 153%, which is a day and a half worth of sugar. So if you're just constantly doing that over and over and over again, basically that line is permanent. It's just, okay, well, how far can we bring it back down to well controlled, which does vary based on age. For people our age, in our age group, I'm going to be very aggressive. I'm going to say, hey, I want you below 6'5" if I can get you there. Okay. If you get to 6'5" to 7, I'm okay. I'll work with you. But anything over 7, nah, we got to be a lot more aggressive, because the thing is, the longer you stay at a certain point, the more damage is being done inside the body. Okay. Versus if someone's, 80 years old, obviously I'm not going to put them on such a strict goal. Okay. I'm going to put them at like a little bit higher, around like 7.5, and say, hey, as long as we can stay around here, good. Because if you try to be too aggressive on them, then you lead to a bunch of other side effects that you did not want.
So, the other question: the sugar-free or diet drinks, is it a better alternative?
I'm always iffy on that one right there, mainly because what we were talking about a minute ago with the caloric burden. But I don't like the increase in the amount of artificial sweeteners, right? So when you do taste that artificial sweetener, your body's going to naturally have an increase in insulin anyway. It's going to cause an insulin spike the moment you taste it. Even though it's not a true sugar, your body's processing is that, so it's going to tell the pancreas, hey, I need some on top of this. So if you're already a diabetic, well, you don't really need a whole lot of that on top of what you're already doing. The main thing you need to be focused on in that situation and overall is, if you're going to have any carbs in, make sure they're complex carbs, okay? They come from fruits and veggies and other different sources like that. The simple carbs and artificial sweeteners is where a lot of people get in trouble at. So if you're going for, let's say you're going for a fruit juice. One of my favorites growing up was the berry punch by, I can't think of what the company is, but I remember I got older and I looked at the back of it one day, and 8 ounces, which, if you know, a water bottle 16 ounces, so half of that was 60% of your daily sugar, right? So doing that right there automatically put me in a bad place. I'm like, okay, fine, let me get the sugar-free version. Well, a lot of times you look at when people check their blood sugars, even on sugar-free, you still see some form of a spike somewhere, because they're still taking in something that's sweet. It's about, okay, moderation. Do I really need that many on a daily basis? And then also we talk about the caffeinated drinks again, right? Well, most sugar-free drinks, when you look at most of them, they're going to have some form of caffeine in them, because you got to have some feeling of, hey, I'm doing something right? I'm still getting some form of energy. So they're going to replace that lost sugar with the caffeine, and now you're still stuck in the same cycle, going back and around, chasing your tail.
So we've talked a lot about sugar hidden in drinks. Are there any other hidden things where people are eating a lot of sugar and they may not realize it that would be easy to cut out?
My people down south, they're going to hate me right now. But grandma's sweet tea is not good for you. Okay, just being honest with you right now. I know it tastes good to you all and whatnot. I hate tea, just putting it out there, so I don't have that problem. But I oftentimes get into debates with my colleagues in the office, because we're always talking about sweet tea and whatnot. That's one of the areas, one of the main staples of foods down here that I see a lot of people get in trouble with. Another is interesting enough that a lot of times people think they're doing healthy on our sandwiches. When you look at the amount of carbs that are located in bread and whatnot, people, I have patients all the time telling me, well, I ate a sandwich, so that was right? Because I had lettuce and tomato on it. Okay, but you also had ultra processed meat on it too. That I mean, how often do you see a piece of a cut of meat on an animal that's shaped perfectly like a ball, right? There's nothing on the animal that's shaped perfectly like a ball. So that means it's gone through a lot of processing and whatnot. And data's really strong that's showing that ultra processed foods are associated with higher insulin spikes and just poor quality of life in general. And like I said, the bread, most people they don't want the tiny little slice of bread. No, they want the nice thick cuts, because they want to feel like they're eating something, right? They want to be full afterward.
And condiments, I'm sure.
Exactly.
What about the Subway guy, though? He was poster child for.
I thought green meant healthy.
Exactly.
You know what else they probably left out for him though is his blood pressure probably went up, because most bread contains a lot of salt. You gotta make it taste good, right?
Right.
So yeah, and then you got sugar and salt, and that's the problem with a lot of different things now. And I'm not telling you not to season your food. Like I said, I'm a cook. I love to cook, but we've lost our way in terms of how much we need to truly add. Overindulgence has taken over to the point where we're constantly eating an excessive amounts of food every single day, whether it be fried or whatever the case may be. And for me, so I have a cookbook in clinic right now that I constantly teach from, that I personally use at home. It's America's Test Kitchen Mediterranean style cookbook. This is not a sponsorship, by the way. Where I tried to show them, hey, this is what your food pyramid should look like. Your plate should be 60 to 70% fruits and veggies and grains. Have some seafood in, limit the red meat, and your sweets and breads should be significantly low. Now, trying to get people to do that all at once, yeah, no, you have a better chance of hurting cats, okay? But what I try to get people to understand is, okay, take things that you do like and try to adapt it to that style of eating, okay? Another thing, simple thing that people can do, I also all the time have people, hey, take a smaller plate instead of the big dinner plate that we're used to. Most times when you think about, like, why do you have a big dinner plate? Well, because you look at most steakhouses, a full-blown steak is not going to fit on this tiny plate, right? You're going to need a big, huge dinner plate to fit it on, right? So if you take a smaller plate, that's another way you limit a lot of times those extra calories that you have hidden in food that you are eating at home. And then another thing here that I have to constantly dispel is people demonizing rice. That's another area where people have assumed, oh yeah, it's full of carbs, it's full of this. Well, that by that logic, then our people out in Far East should have the highest obesity rates in the world because they eat more rice than anyone else. But yet that's not the case, right? Why? Because their food is also littered with vegetables. If you eat a lot of veggies, you'll notice that you're full a lot longer. Like if I told you, hey, I want you to eat an entire bag of Lay's potato chips, right? You know, if you're sitting there binge watching your favorite TV show, you might go through that entire bag, right? But if I told you, hey, I want you to just destroy a bag of apples, well, you might get like 3, 4 in, and it's like, okay, I'm sick of eating all these apples. Right? It's kind of excessive, right? And so that's where the difficulty comes in. It's like, okay, making the choice to move from something that's ultra processed to a whole food.
So what's a good alternative for energy? Because when I wake up in the morning, I feel as though I need something to just get me going. And so I could drink a cup of coffee, and that's good because it gets my day started, and I can do that in the morning. But is there an alternative, something healthy that we could do that gives us energy, like that little boost we need to get us going for the day?
Feeling we're not going to like the answer.
Come on, give me something.
The chuckle made me think I'm not going to like this.
Yeah, it's a very simple one. Sleep. Yeah.
What if you have a baby that doesn't sleep?
Sleep. Like that's one of those things. It sounds so simple, but it's one of those things. It's like as I get older, and I'm not super old, by the way. I'm in my early 30s. It is imperative that you do focus on getting good quality sleep. So I was one of those types. I used to stay up till 11, 12, some no odd reason whatsoever. I had no good reason to be up that late. Now, if nothing's going on and the kids are asleep, I'll probably be out about 8 o'clock. There's no point in me staying up late. But now, let's say you're trying to get your day going the next morning, right? Well, I'm not totally against the caffeine, right? Coffee is not that bad for you as long as it's in controlled amounts. Problem comes into play is when you want to dress it up, like we talked about earlier. When you go to Starbucks and you add 15 other different things to it that take it from something that should have been relatively okay to something that's like basically so calorically dense that you can possibly eat it for dinner and not eat anything else for the rest of the night, okay? Fruit, another area, right? People love it. For me, this morning I went to Publix, got a nice little container of grapes. And so a lot of times it's kind of how I like to start my day. So I'll start with either some type of fresh fruit, oranges, something citrus, something just to kind of help get my day going and whatnot. Some people like teas. Again, I hate tea, so you're not gonna hear me advocate for it. Yeah. But that's another option right there too. Some people like using green teas to kind of help get their days going as well. So that's another thing too. Also, a routine is more important than anything else too. Getting to a healthy routine. If you're constantly in a chaotic mood, that doesn't help you. Like what you said, you like to get your coffee, get going and whatnot because it's a part of your routine. So that's what helps you get going, right?
Right.
But, it's about making sure that routine is as healthy as possible without adding on a bunch of other stuff that you don't need, okay? Right. So make sure you also eat a balanced breakfast too. I don't know why, but people don't like breakfast. Eat a balanced breakfast. Your metabolism will thank you. Also makes it easier to control diabetes too when you're eating a breakfast too.
Makes a lot of sense. So how much of diabetes is genetic versus environmental lifestyle?
Oh, okay. So we got a nature versus nurture argument.
Well, I'm asking, there's a lot of people that just say, oh, my mother was diabetic. Oh, my dad was diabetic. So
that's one of those areas where I've had patients get upset with me before. because I feel like it's a cop-out at times, okay? My dad is a diabetic, okay? Diabetes runs rampant throughout my family. I'm not a diabetic. Why? Because I saw where that was going, and I said, okay, let's make the changes here. Does it have a genetic predisposition? Yes, especially strong with type 1 diabetics. Type 2, if the predisposition is there in the family, yes, it will somewhat follow. You have the risk factors there. It's just basically if you see the pile of leaves on the ground with gasoline on them, it's just whether or not you choose to throw the match on it, okay? And a lot of times, people will say, well, it runs in my family, so I knew I was going to be a diabetic anyway. Not necessarily. That's not necessarily true, okay? The risk factor is there, just like, for instance, people who have familial hypercholesterolemia. I know it's a big word right there, but it's going to follow the genetic line, right? But what can you do to help keep it down so you don't suffer from a heart attack or a stroke or whatever the case may be? Same thing with diabetes. Now, like I said, for type 1s, without going too far out into the sticks, there are certain genetic predispositions that's going to follow them regardless, okay? Certain things your body's going to do that's going to fight against that process. There's nothing you can do to fight against that, okay? That's a lot of times where type 1s are diagnosed as kids because it was going to come from them regardless, okay? But then you also have all of these other things too that go into play. For instance, social determinants of health is a big area. Think about food deserts, right? If I drive down 72 here in Athens, I can go straight down 72. Probably won't run into one healthy option going down that road at all, right? And it's not me trying to demean Athens. I mean, you can go down to Madison, Cliff Farms. It's the same thing. A lot of times people think, oh, if I go to Panera, that's the healthy option. Well, no, everything there is bread, cheese, sugar. Like one of my favorite things is a cinnamon crunch bagel. Oh, but it's from Panera. It's healthy, right? No, it's not. It's bad for me. And I also like to slather it in this honey walnut cream cheese. Great dessert. But guess what? It's a dessert. It's meant for indulgence. And that's another area where people get in trouble at is, we're talking about nature versus nurture right here, right? Well, if you're constantly in this mindset where you have to indulge on a weekly basis, you're constantly eating the most unhealthy option every single day. Well, yes, it's going to eventually get a hold of you. I mean, if I keep running back and forth across 72 outside over and over again, eventually the time might come where I might get hit by a vehicle. Correct? Yep. So it's about like what changes are you making on a daily basis and not relying on just saying, hey, it's in my family, so it's going to happen. No, it's not. You can control it somewhat.
I appreciate how simple you put these things.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, I appreciate the parallels to real life things to help us understand better what's happening.
How does fasting play into it? How can that help?
Oh boy. So fasting, that's a loaded gun question. The reason being is because everybody's body is different. Okay. For instance, I've tried intermittent fasting. I actually just recently got off of it. And you know what happened when I did it? I gained weight.
Really?
Yes. My metabolism does not like me fasting. So I can try it all day long. I have patients all day long who say, oh yeah, I did fasting. I lost 30 pounds in 4 months. I'm like, must be nice. Because I have to eat like a vegetarian and run almost daily to help keep my weight off. So everybody's body is totally different. But what fasting does do is it basically helps your body kind of reprogram itself, okay? Your body gets a sense that, hey, okay, you know what? The sugar's out of the system. Fine, what am I going to convert to? I'm going to convert to using my fat and muscle stores. Now, the problem with that is if your diet is not optimized for when you do break that fast, what do you think it's going to start tapping into? It's going to go past the fat and it's going to start eating the muscle next, okay? So you have to make sure that you're still giving yourself some form of protein in. And right now we do have, with people who are fasting, and I've seen this a lot in the kids, they want to all hit a protein goal. Protein goals are all nice and fine and dandy, but I want to see if you can hit a fiber goal. That's the hard one, okay? You can. Everybody can hit a protein goal. You can go eat a steak and hit a protein goal, but trying to hit a fiber goal, like those bag of apples I was talking about a minute ago, different ball game, right? So fasting, the data has shown that it works, especially whenever people do intermittent fasting. Why? Because your metabolism follows your circadian rhythm, which is going to follow the what outside? The sun, right? So if you're fasting, overnight and you skip breakfast, okay, well, if you're eating during the daytime, your body's more likely to burn through those calories. Problem is when you break your fast too late and now you're eating going into the nighttime. Sun is down, metabolism starts to go down with it. So what your body do? Okay, fine, I'll start hanging on to everything. And so it wants to hang on to everything you're eating, and now you're holding on. Think about how grandma used to cook, right? She used to cook supper around 4? Why? Yeah. Because they didn't want you to lay down with all that food on your belly, correct?
Right.
Following a lot of the same principles. in that sense. They didn't understand it, but yeah, it's following a lot of the same principles.
So this is a lot of really good information, and it seems practical and simple, right? How do we educate ourselves on this information so that we can make better choices?
Again, funny again. So a lot of times, some people are going to mad at me, but just come see someone like me. It's just that simple. Especially someone who's going to try to guide. You need a guide sometimes. Social media is full of disinformation right now, misinformation. People are, trying different things right now. Everyone's trying to reinvent the wheel when it's very simple about just doing the small things on a daily basis. Just go talk to your healthcare provider. Get your baseline labs. I just recently had mine done. Okay. See where I stand. I mean, coming up, 33 right now. So I needed to see where I stood on my lab. So I recently got them done just to see, hey, what's my blood sugar like? My blood sugar was 81. Everything else is going fairly well right now. So it's good to know where you stand. A lot of times you have to overcome that fear and understanding like, hey, knowing is half the battle. And if you just choose not to know, well, I hope you're ready for the consequences that come down the line if you're choosing not to have the healthiest lifestyle on a daily basis. So that's the easiest one right there too. Another thing too, for people who are established diabetics, okay? American Diabetes Association website is full of information about basically everything diabetes from head to toe. They even have free recipes. So if you're looking for like, okay, I want to learn about more diabetic centric recipes, they're all free on their website. You can find a bunch of them on there. Okay. They have a lot of different information and whatnot. And then also another thing that doctors can get you set up with, nutritionists. I love my nutritionists. I think they're worth their weight in gold. Diabetes educators. Just having someone where you can sit down, because my business is only so long. But if you can have someone you can sit down and talk to for an hour, hour and a half, and just ask them all the different questions. And diabetes is literally all they do all day long. This is a great thing for you. There's a diabetes educator at the hospital over here who I constantly send a lot of patients to, and she constantly sends me a lot of patients because we're trying to get people optimized as best as possible.
I think it's hard sometimes to look in the mirror when you know the right things to do, but then when you kind of look back at your day, at the end of the day, I know I'll kind of look back and go, man, I really did not need to have that, or I didn't need to
I'm
drink.
a big fan of a little
that
something
many
sweet.
of
A little
Yeah,
treat.
like,
a little
I'll do
treat.
that
I
tomorrow.
really don't need this energy drink right now.
Yeah, that's
While it's in my hand, right?
I'm guilty of it. At the end of the day, I love a bowl of cookies and cream ice cream. My wife gives them to me all the time. But what I start doing is just, I'm like, okay, you know what? I got a bowl this week. Let's not get a bowl till next week. Just leave it alone.
Well, I have learned so much. And so I'll just say like the fasting, because I've done the fasting in the past, but I've never heard anyone explain the fasting about kind of the day and the night, kind of like what you just explained it. So I didn't know that. So I appreciate that. And I will certainly be thinking about my pancreas running a race when I'm overdoing it. So that certainly kind of gives it visual, I guess, to it. So either one of y'all have something you want to share that you learned before we close out the episode?
I learned a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I learned a lot. I think educating yourself and, like you said, being willing to see it for what it is. I think a lot of times the problem is the fear of, it doesn't really make sense where you have fear to go to the doctor because you may find out something's wrong, but that's what you need to know so you can fix it, right?
About the fact that it's not concerned about something being wrong.
But yeah, I think this conversation has been good, just to make sure we're on top of things and taking care of it before you do cross that line that makes it difficult to get back into.
Don't trust
safe
Dr.
zone.
Google for everything. Go to a primary care physician.
Just go see someone, just see where you stand, and just go from there.
Even if you feel like you're perfectly healthy, just
Always.
take the jump. Yeah, I haven't. I'm overdue myself for a primary care visit, so taking notes over here.
You're challenging us.
Yes, absolutely.
Also, I want you to just exercise for me 4 or 5 times a week. Make healthy choices. Make sure you're meet your fiber goals. Eat at least 67% fruit and veggies a day. And just get the movement. I don't care how you get the movement, whether it be basketball, walking, volleyball, weights, whatever. I want you up moving. That's all.
Thank you so much for coming today and sharing all this with us. And I know we'll have lots of questions and other subjects that we bring you back for. So we just really appreciate you being here.
No problem. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Healthy Conversations. A big thank you to Dr. Stocks for breaking down the facts about diabetes, the hidden dangers of sugar-sweetened drinks, and the real-life changes we can make to live healthier lives. Whether it's making smarter drink choices, getting more active, or just becoming more aware of how food affects your body, small steps can lead to big health wins. Be sure to follow Athens Limestone Hospital on social media to catch future episodes, tips, and tools to support your wellness journey. From all of us at Athens Limestone Hospital, thanks for being part of Healthy Conversations.